You. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Faye D'Souza. Yesterday, we did an update for you for 1 year since the Hathras crime had taken place to find out what the status was of the victim's family, what the status was of the legal process of the case, and what was going on in the village. As we found out, things are not great. And it also seems hopeless about the fact that things don't seem to be changing. And it's not just this one case. Over the last several months, there have been a series of crimes against specifically women from oppressed castes. Yesterday, we had Cynthia Stephen join us in our conversation. She's an activist, a writer, a policy researcher, and independent journalist. And she had a very important view about the manner in which the media deals with these crimes, the manner in which the police deals with the crime, and the manner in which the rest of society deals with crimes like this. She was of the view that this causes a certain level of impunity where people continue to commit crime like this because they feel they're just never going to get punished. I felt that it needed a longer conversation, perhaps where we could understand a little bit better what Ms. Stephen wanted to tell us. So we've decided today to bring you another edition of Pass the Mic. Now, the whole point of Pass the Mic is simply that we hand over the platform and we understand a little clearly what it is we're doing wrong and how we can work better. Cynthia Stephen has agreed very kindly to join us on this show again. Ms. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to get straight to it. You did say you believe that the media deals with these cases wrongly. Could you tell us what the media is doing wrong specifically and what needs to be corrected?
Yes. Well, it's a two-edged sword, really. I would say that without the media, these things don't get publicized, and publicity is important for for the authorities to take action. So it is not that it's all bad, but there is a kind of angle to this whole issue of reportage of gender violence, and specifically of gender violence experienced by women from the oppressed communities. And here I think there is one important point, and that is highlighting the victimhood of the community, the women. You see, a lot of the reasons why these women are targeted, they don't happen in a void. It's not as if there is a if somebody suddenly got a crime of, it's a crime of passion. Somebody suddenly felt lustful and went on a rape. No, these are all carefully planned attacks, and they are carefully orchestrated attacks. Last week in Kolar town, which is just about 50 kilometers out of Bangalore, the next district, we had a situation where girls from a small village were traveling into the city regularly by bus to go to college. Dalit girls, 4 girls used to go together. And they used to be systematically targeted and troubled all during the 4 months. So finally, the girls complained to their parents. So when the parents came to ask the boys who were troubling her, they mobilized a group of 50 people to beat up the parents of the Dalit girls who brought it in. So this is not a new thing. This is a kind of a targeting of any Dalit women particularly, who try to come into the open space. All of us know, if they're taking a better education, if they're taking a public office. For instance, all of us know how Dalit women sarpanches have had to battle a lot of casteism and classism when they try to carry out their duties. Even though they may be sarpanch of the village, they are not expected to attend the meetings. The books are sent to the house, and there is so much of discrimination and lack of acceptance of a public role for them. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, what does the media do? How do they respond? A lot of times in the past, as you know, there has been a lot of shaming of the community by talking about honor, by naming the victim. And then now the law has changed. There is a strict law saying that the victim is not to be named. Not only that, identifying details are not to be given away. And so, as we know, that there was a big hoo-ha about a prominent politician visiting the home of the girl who was killed, and his Twitter account was suspended because the parents' photos were tweeted. So this, as I said, it can cut both ways. It can go against you and it can go for you. But I want to also say that overall media reportage is very limited to when the crime happens. There is so little follow-up of what happens. No, follow-up of what happens, how the cases are being, how they're being, how they're going through the courts, how they're being investigated, and how they're being, how it's turning out. And this is the best part. That is many of these cases are not even if their FIR is filed, as you know, you don't put the correct sections, and these issues are not.
So Cynthia, we have a couple of questions for you. I'd like to go question by question because I think we'd be helping our audience understand this a little better. Ranu has asked, what is the scope of the SCST Atrocities Act? Does it come into play in every case? Is the police required to register in each and every one of these cases? Also, Ranu asks, it feels like from the news that assault on women on Dalit women is on the rise. Is this because it's being reported more? Was this always the case, or is it on the rise now? What do you think, in your opinion?
I think yes, the SCST Act immediately applies if the survivor of the crime is a Dalit. It immediately applies and has to be registered. It so happens though that doesn't happen. The police often try not to register. They do not put the correct name, the correct sections in the FIR. Furthermore, there is a lot of the cases that come up to that are filed. They don't eventually they are closed because they will the local politicians, the men in the community, people are threatened. Many of them run away from the village, or the whole village is intimidated in such a way that they leave the village. And so justice is not done, and a so-called compromise is arrived at. Now the court has very clearly said that no compromises are permitted or acceptable in the case of Dalit crimes against Dalits and in case of rapes. But it still happens. If the case doesn't come to court, who knows what is happening? So they may intimidate or bribe the community leaders or the community members or the family. And so a lot of times there are like employer-employee relationships. So these people, the family's economy depends on the assailant community. So that's why I always say another thing. That is, we do mention the caste of the victim. Nobody mentions the caste of the assailant. So they will say the Dalit girl was raped, or an Adivasi girl was raped, a Muslim girl was raped. But they will not say a Thakur boy raped, a Yadav boy raped. That doesn't happen. And that has to also come into the picture, that the media needs to talk about that, isn't it? See, this is the point. The point is, this is the important. This is the silent. So nobody, the assailant doesn't have a caste, he only has a gender, right? That's what the media is saying. But I want to ask why the caste of the assailant, because 99% of the time, the victims are from a disadvantaged community and the males are from a dominant community. 99% of the
There's actually a question that always comes up whenever my team and I report on a crime of this kind. People write to us on Twitter saying, why are you bringing the caste of the victim? A woman is a woman. Why do you have to constantly say Dalit girl or Dalit child or Dalit woman? Do you believe, and I want to understand this for clarity, do you believe that it is important to include that detail because it is also a caste-based crime, or it may be primarily a caste-based crime? Or do you think that it is just gender-based and so those details of caste are not important?
See, it's an intersection of gender and caste. This is the important thing to understand, that it's women who are upwardly mobile and who talk a lot, who are assertive. These are the ones from the marginalized communities who get targeted for sexual violence. This has to be first understood. And who is she threatening when she opens her mouth and questions or goes to educate? It is the patriarchal caste system. And so the beneficiaries of the patriarchal caste system immediately take quote unquote corrective action to put the woman in her place and thereby the Dalits in their place. And that is why you will find that girls who are going to college there is a soft way of doing it and there's a hard way of doing it. The soft way is to claim that the man is madly in love with the girl and he wants to marry or whatever, post attentions. What is wrongly called eve teasing. There's nothing like eve teasing. This is nothing but public sexual harassment. So, and then romantic, enticing them romantically, basically to divert them from their career path. Because once girls and boys from Dalit community study, they go in for government jobs and their status in society will go up, and that this is a way of diverting them. That is one. That is the soft way. The hard way is to gang up together and rape her. So these are all strategies that have been systematically used. So yes, it is a caste and a gender-based crime. And so it is important. Have you ever seen a Brahmin girl, a headline? It's not that, a Brahmin girl raped or a Rajput girl raped or a Yadav girl raped. Have you seen anything in the media like that ever? Ever? Yes. The reason is, even if they happen, probably they do happen. But a lot of the time, these kind of sexual violences happen from within the family, because a lot of the movements of the women from the more privileged communities are a lot, they're given less freedom of movement. So if at all they face sexual violence, it is from men in their own circle. So there is family-based violence. There may be child sexual abuse or even, abuse from female. So that is an matter of honor, and it is quickly and quietly kept hidden and never ever reaches the authorities. They are suppressed. Those cases are suppressed. So that's why you will find the NCRP data saying that, there's a large number of the sexual violence is reported and filed, cases filed are against Dalit women. So there is a bit of truth in both, that the level of sexual violence experience or targeted the women of the Dalit and marginalized communities are targeted for more sexual violence. That is also true. Of late, the level of reporting of these crimes has also gone up. And the media focus has also seen that. So there is a simultaneous, I wouldn't say that there has been any great increase per se, but the level, the number of cases is going up in absolute terms. So I think it's a moving, it's like a moving target. The crimes also are increasing. The reportage is also increasing. Overall, the system is not responding as it should. And that is
I want to ask you this, Cynthia, if I may. I know that in the varied conversations that we've had over the years, there's another layer of a problem, which is when the family or the survivor go to file a complaint about any sort of these crimes, the police who are in uniform are also representatives of the caste groups they come from. And a lot of time, these families are dissuaded from filing a complaint. Their complaints are burked, which means that they're never actually turned into FIRs. The family actually, a lot of times the family members, the brothers, the fathers are kept in lockup to teach them a lesson. A word is sent to the perpetrator's family saying, "Aapke khilaf ye complaint aaya, kya kare iska?" So even the establishment, while they're not supposed to represent caste or religion or any other community, they're supposed to represent law, they don't, because the police also in many parts of our country work for the caste they come from. What does that then mean for the families?
Yes, precisely. It's not only for the caste they come from. It's also about power at the local level. So In fact, we know of cases where the SI may be a Dalit, I mean, the SHO may be a Dalit, but he dare not take a position in favor of the victim. He will have to kowtow to the local power elites. And so there is always this, there's always a doubt about whether the, justice is going to be done. In fact, I would say you're very right that it is the victim's family, the survivor's family who are further and further victimized, as we noted yesterday in the Hathras case. Instead, my question was, if the families are feeling intimidated, if the Dalit family is feeling intimidated, to make them more comfortable, what you should do is take away the people who are intimidating them and the freedom of the perpetrators who are intimidating them. Instead, what we see happening is that they themselves are being, put behind a wall of TRPF. So it's that's what the system is supposed to be doing, but that's not the case. See, for instance, I give an example. In the case of child rights, when there is a hearing or there's a child who's having to testify in a case where the child is a victim of or a survivor of some violence or whatever, there is an elaborate arrangement where the child's they don't in the court, or there's a separate arrangement where they can talk to the without being without facing their assailant. This is no different. Here also, it's a huge threat to the people's lives. And I don't understand, when they are living in the village, how it is possible for the system to be so very insensitive, to not take into account the fact that they're so vulnerable. And instead of, intimidating, taking corrective action against the perpetrators or those who are doing the intimidation, the victims are further, locked up behind, and, their freedoms are further restricted. So this is the point. My point is the impunity that exists to rapists, and the reason why these caste crimes, these sexual violence crimes continue to go up rather than down is because the system which is supposed to deal with it, the system of justice, the law and order, the police, the judiciary, hospital authorities who have to issue, medical reports and post-mortem reports, whatever. All of these are complicit to ensure that the caste hierarchies are maintained, that the survivors continue to be victimized. All these state machineries continue to act to further increase the problems and increase the oppression upon the survivor of the violence.
So, when you talk about NCRB numbers, for our audience's benefit, NCRB is the National Crimes Records Bureau. So they actually put out data. They should put out data once a year. They rarely put out data once a year. Sometimes comes out once in 2 years to tell us how many cases of rape were registered across the country, which states did they come in from, what the nature, and of every single crime that's registered across the country, there's this massive data dump that comes once a year. Interestingly, year on year, we see an increase in crimes against women. We see a year-on-year increase against crimes against women from Dalit and Adivasi communities.
Yes.
Whenever I have had a conversation with very retired senior police officers, they give us a completely different argument. They say, an increase means people are registering complaints and the police is actually taking these complaints, which is a good thing. So do not, as the media, if you bring it up against the police as a bad thing, they will start to burk the complaints, they will stop taking the complaints, and that's actually working against the cause. Now, this is really, and this is a consistent response that we get.
Yes.
So how do we deal with this response? It's almost like saying if you ask the police what is going wrong, they will stop doing their jobs. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a consistent response we get every time we ask this question.
Absolutely. So this reminds me of someone a statement I heard when I was a very young child in school, and I made some kind of a remark about how the caste system discriminated against a large section of people. But one elderly person who was listening to the conversation, butted in to say, but because of the caste system, there is peace in this country. This is the, and then in another context, I had put out a book in which the lives of women in India had been profiled. I had a profile of a woman from a Devadasi community, and a man who was visiting my office looked at my book and he flipped the pages. He came to this little write-up I had on the Devdasi. Then he said, "Madam, you don't understand. We have to have the Devdasi system. If not, you don't know what will happen in society. There won't be anything left like a family." This was the mail. So yes, this is the way in which there is a vested interest by men, particularly caste men, for the system, for the exploitation of Dalit women's bodies, their labor, Dalit men's bodies and their labor. You know, it is this, the entire caste structure, social and economic structure is built upon this, political structure even. So when we have people who sincerely believe that this is the way in which the society should go, then tell me how on earth, and the common person believes that this is how it should be, how on earth will we see change? So unless there is a concerted effort, see that not only is the law very clear, it is also true that the media has also been exposing a lot of the crimes. So it's, as I said, it's not all bad. And also, on the other hand, we have seen a rise in people of goodwill who also raise their voices and explain and feel concerned about this. So everything, it's like the biblical image of the wheat and the tares, right, growing together. We really need to, work together to bring about a positive social change. But at another point, if I may introduce, you see, there is a my work with women also greatly focuses on access to justice. And I'm sorry to say that the access to justice for women in particular, and the Dalit women in particular, that is women in general and Dalit women in particular, is very, very, very serious. It's a huge problem. And when you come about a case where there has been mass violence, mass killings of Dalits in pogroms that have happened across the country, there has been not a single mass killing where there have been convictions, except in the case of Khairlanji, but there it was not considered a caste crime. It was a mob lynching, a caste-based mob lynching, but it was not considered crime. So I want to talk about, this kind of a situation. What is it? The Ranveer Singh Act created 2 or 3 major incidents in UP. And there has never been, all the accused were acquitted. Then who killed those 41 people, including tiny babies? In Kola, right here in Bangalore, next to Bangalore again, as I said, some years ago, about 12 to 15 years ago, there was a huge atrocity in which 7 Dalit families were burnt alive. The case went to the High Court and everybody was acquitted. Nobody burnt them. Nobody, no justice. Who killed them? Why? Why is the system unable to deliver justice to the Dalits? Why is there no questioning? And then also that, I think, what is it? Lakshmanpur Bate. There's one very Lakshmanpur. The only one, there was one in which one incident called Chundur, in which a few people were convicted. That was because there was consistent follow-up by the community. Otherwise, when there is a mass killing, a pogrom against Dalits, there is no. I was, for instance, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was an entire village of Dalits, a colony of Dalits, 100 families, came and sat in Bangalore on protest for almost a month. And the reason was that a woman insisted, in school kitchens, the woman is there are 3 people, 1 cook and then 2 helpers to cook the midday meal. So this was some years ago. And so there were one woman, and the provisions say that a Dalit woman can be preferred. So a Dalit woman applied and got the post. Then they said, okay, you can take your salary, but you can stay at home. Got the job. They said, don't come and cook. You take your salary and stay. She says, no, I want to work. They would not allow it. When she insisted, there was a huge thing, and this was in Chitradurga district. The whole family was chased away. So they all came and sat in protest for 30 days or more in Bangalore. Nothing happened. They just went back with no solution. This is the pattern.
So, Cynthia, let me ask you this question. I'm going to go back to the voice that we have to keep referring to whenever we talk about caste-based violence and caste-based discrimination in India. And that is the voice of B.R. Ambedkar. And he wrote extensively about what needs to be done. It was just a solution that nobody wanted to implement. One of the things he said is that the only way forward is to abolish caste completely. There will be no solution if we continue to maintain these sort of walls and segregation between castes. And he also said that the real remedy, he said, I'm convinced that the real remedy is intermarriage, the fusion of blood along caste lines, across caste lines, so that everybody becomes family. Unfortunately, crimes of, across intercaste marriage, where couples are murdered in cold blood by their own families for doing exactly what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar recommended that we do, is another, it comes up in our papers on a regular basis. We read about it, we move on, but it is a massive, massive problem in our country that has not gone away. It happens in our big cities even today. Where is our solution then? Where would we ever find the end to this sort of thing?
I believe that you're right in a way, but I think if you look back to say the early years of our country, say 50 years ago, 40 years ago, you yourself would have known of couples who, ran away, eloped and got married for love. And they may have been kept away from their family, but nobody went after them and killed them. All this violent killing has started only in the past few years, say the past 20, 25 years. And I believe it's a cyclical thing. So I don't think caste mobilizations have hardened in the recent years due to political reasons, and it is a churning in our society, I think, which is creating this. For instance, we feel our generation, maybe your generation even, grew up with this idea of unity and diversity and all that. Now that is seriously being challenged, and they're talking about one India and a homogeneous India, not the pluralistic culture that we actually really enjoy. So I think that it's important for us to go back to those values, and that those are but what you said about young people marrying across caste lines, and that's what Ambedkar wanted. I don't think they're thinking when they're getting falling in marriage. They're basically marrying for love. But there's caste endogamy. What prevents them? What is the problem that is caused? What is the reason for the opposition they face? This is the ideology of caste endogamy. And this endogamy, it is clearly linked to the caste practice of caste. And everybody has to critically understand what role that plays. Because as Chanakya has, a friend of mine quotes Chanakya saying that the ideology is so strong that it targets the child in the mother's womb. And that is so true, because even now in our culture, girls are targeted in their mother's womb before they are born. So this selection, this the misogyny, the patriarchy, the violence that women are subjected to, the violence that the other, that is the caste outsider, is subjected to, it's definitely due to the hardening of the idea of caste. And only people of goodwill, all of us need to get together and work. And that is why I'm so glad. I really want to commend you, Faye, for repeatedly, in the face of huge challenges, bringing up these matters and talking about it, because unless we talk about these things, they will just get swept under the carpet and nobody talks about it. And I really want to appreciate you, because not everyone has these conversations out in the open. So,
Cynthia, it means a lot to me to hear you say that. To our audience who are still writing, what can we do? I'll tell you what I discovered. I discovered that there is a great deal of very important writing that has already happened. We haven't read because they don't include it in our schooling. They teach us that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrote and framed the Constitution, and that's it. They don't tell us anything else about him, but he's written such a lot, and there's so much to read, and it's so easily available. That's your first step. Also, we have so many modern, current, contemporary writers who are writing about what it is like to grow up Dalit in India, what it is like to grow up at the intersection of Dalit and gender, what it is like to grow up Dalit and transgender in India, what all of these experiences are like. All we have to do is read, listen, pay attention to these voices to understand that our society has not moved in 75 years. We haven't gotten any better. The equality that our Constitution promises us on page 1, we have not shared. Those of us who were born with privilege have clutched onto that equality with our fingernails and refused to share it with anyone else. I want to open a space here where we talk about all of these things, all of this, misunderstanding of what reservation is, all of these things that people constantly use as criticism. Let's open a space where we can talk about it, we can understand it, we can learn more. Cynthia, you want to say something? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was just saying that you're so right that that what you said triggered another important something to do, and that is when you're recommending reading writers who wrote about caste or wrote about their experiences. I think that one of the reasons why, and I've mentioned this earlier elsewhere, one of the reasons why that has happened, we've seen this relatively new hardening of attitudes, is because of our school system. It's a very unequal school system. We all grew up in a very common school system. Everybody was reading the same textbooks. Everybody was in the same. There were only a state board school that you had. Very few schools were there which did a central or an international syllabus. But so therefore everybody was on the same page. But here, because of the gradation and class distinctions that one has seen in the school system in the recent past, this has actually reduced the exposure that children have. Successive generations, maybe 2 or 3 generations of children have lost, maybe till 20, 30 years after independence, maybe 30, 40 years even after independence. But in the last 30 years, definitely, the schooling system, that distinction that has come between state board schools, ICSE schools, CBSE schools, and international, that has created a caste divide.
Yes. I want to, if I may, Cynthia, ask you one more question, and this is from our viewer Kumara, who has written 2 points. He said, "What is it like growing up Dalit in India? ? You can become the president of India. Mayawati can become the chief minister of the largest state of India." This is true. We do have the highest office of our land is held by a member of the Dalit community as we speak. But does that cover it? Does that cover what it is like to grow up Dalit in India? Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's in fact the exception that proves the rule. You see, because even he's the president of India is, of course, from a Dalit community, but does he represent Dalits? Biologically he may have been born to Dalit parents, but has he been? Is he there because he's representing the cause? Because the people who have put him there believe that actually the reality is that it's very, very rare that someone comes up like he's not the only Dalit president. We also had Mr. Narayanan. He was a clear representative of Dalits and was an achiever in his own right, and sort of and Ambedkar also, for instance, he was not in the running for the to be in the drafting committee. It was Gandhi who strongly recommended to Nehru that Ambedkar is the right person. You see, so they had their own personal qualities and capacities recommended them to that position. So I don't know whether it is that which brought up, the present, president into position, or maybe it is just like a token. I would say it's a token. It's tokenism. I don't see him speaking up about anything that had to do anything to do with of relevance in this country. So I think that's just a thing. It's like saying the women in India are empowered because Indira Gandhi was one of the most powerful prime ministers. There's no connection between the two. But
yes.
Sorry, but when you talk about Mayawati, it's different. It's true that she had leadership, that she was part of a system and came and rose, by dint of her personality and capabilities, maybe. Well, she does, in that sense, represent Dalit aspirations and capabilities at once.
So I just want to point out to Kumara and anybody else who might be asking this question. When our constitution promises us equality and fraternity across the board, it doesn't mean that one among us might rise to the top and that's good for all of us. It means that we will all be equal. It means not a single one among us should be less than equal. So it is obviously a great thing. It is obviously something of celebration that we have a member of the Dalit community in the highest office of our land. That's fantastic. We should be proud about it. But unless every single member of the Dalit community, every single one is treated with equality in education, in healthcare, in human rights, unless every single one is treated the same way as a Brahmin or a Yadav when they walk into a police station, when they walk into a court of law, when they walk into a government office, unless that distinction between these two castes is completely erased, we will not be fulfilling what our constitution promises.
Quite.
So it's not about one rising to the top. It's about no one being left behind, not a single one being left behind. And that is the charter that has been written out for us to achieve. We cannot rest back saying, oh, we got one person in office and so we're done. We're not done. We're not even close to being done because we're not even acknowledging the problem. And that is the biggest issue right now, that every time that something bubbles to the top via the media, people want to look away. They want to deny it and say, no, this is not about caste. This is about gender. No, this is not about caste. This is about something else. No, people are angry about reservation. And I promise you, we'll talk about all of those things because unless we acknowledge and unless we understand, we're never going to get anywhere closer to truly being equal. I'm going to leave this here, but I promise you we'll have more of these conversations. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me here, for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. To our audience, the news comes up at 9 o'clock. Remember, it's just the news, as the name suggests. There's no opinion, there's no drama, there's no debate. It's only what happened today. Do please share it with your friends and family. Like, subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. It helps us. If you comment on our videos, it pops up in the algorithm and more people will see it, and that helps us as well. In the meantime, we continue to give you the news every day as a free social service. So your liking and subscribing is how we will manage to pay salaries and continue to provide this service for you. Thank you for watching. Good night.